Good morning and welcome back. So we just finished up spring break, which means we are off to a new unit. Yes, we had a test the day before spring break, but we will survive. So our new unit is going to be on meteorology and the atmosphere, which basically means we're talking about everything between space and us when it comes to the atmosphere and the layers it has, as well as what things happen within that atmosphere. So most importantly, what we need to talk about is, okay, how is the atmosphere formed? It's a thin layer of gas that surrounds the Earth, but what keeps it in place? So the big thing is we have items like volcanoes, for instance, naturally, that push off smoke, gas, and other particulates into the air. And when that happens, the natural gravity we know that surrounds Earth, that keeps us on Earth, is also going to pull those gases, pull those particulates back to the planet. That gravitational pull is what leads to the formation of the atmosphere and also leads to how the different layers are going to be formed. However, what's really important is that even though a lot of these gases come from volcanoes, we're going to find that only a few gases make up the atmosphere. The biggest two are going to be nitrogen and oxygen. 78% of the atmosphere is nitrogen, believe it or not. 21% is oxygen, and less than 1% is basically everything else. So that includes carbon dioxide, water, argon, and other gases. So again, 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, which doesn't make sense because what are we breathing in and out the most? What do we need the most? What we're going to find is that these different gases will lead to different reactions in the atmosphere. And that's something that we're going to talk about in lesson 4.2, which is going to be at the end of this one. So before we get there, there's going to be 5 main layers of the atmosphere. The first is the troposphere. This is where weather happens and where clouds happen. It's the closest to the Earth. Again, the troposphere, weather. The stratosphere, on the other hand, is where we're going to find ozone. And ozone we're going to talk about and how it warms our planet and why it's so important to us as people. So troposphere, stratosphere. The third layer is the mesosphere. So M for middle, mesosphere. That's going to be our coldest layer, and you'll start to see why a little bit as we move on. So troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere. What comes fourth is the thermosphere. And the way you can remember that the thermosphere is fourth is because it goes from cold to hot. So it goes from middle to hot. The thermosphere is the hottest layer. And we close things out with the exosphere. The exosphere is the exit, the end. Okay, that's where we have is outer space. It's that last little piece. So again, we've got the troposphere, the stratosphere, the mesosphere, the thermosphere, and the exosphere. They all have different characteristics. They all have different ways that they're going to be heated, warmed, and cooled. And that's going to lead to how they interact with each other and how they lead to how the planet's going to function as well. Now, when we talk about these, we see the impact of the troposphere and the stratosphere more than anything else, because the troposphere has weather, it has our clouds, it has everything that we need to survive. We're going to talk a lot about weather systems, we're going to talk a lot about clouds, we're going to talk about how these things happen, but we need to see the impacts of these two things. So the second layer, the stratosphere, has ozone. That's another one of the gases in the atmosphere. And what ozone does is it sets this protective layer around the troposphere that blocks UV radiation from getting in. So when you have ozone, which is 3 oxygen molecules, you're going to find that no radiation is going to get in. However, other gases in the atmosphere are going to break down ozone. We call those greenhouse gases. Now, they're also called greenhouse gases because they trap heat in the atmosphere. When we have radiation from the sun coming into our atmosphere in the Earth, there's 3 things that can happen. They can absorb into the atmosphere, so the different molecules, the carbon dioxides, the ozones, the nitrogen gases, the water. They can also come from the sun and bounce off. We call that reflection. And the last thing they can do is they can pass through all the air and get to the surface of the Earth and warm the surface of the Earth. Those 3 things are going to be very important. So again, absorption, passage, and reflection are the 3 things that radiation can do when it gets into the atmosphere. Now, I talk about these greenhouse gases because what they do, again, is they trap heat in, and this leads to what we call global warming. Now, all global warming is the constant increase of the global temperature over time. Now, that's kind of crazy considering the water we have absorbs so much heat and temperature, you wouldn't think that we'd be able to change that much, but small changes in temperature lead to big changes in how the Earth functions. And one of the big gases that's important, even though it takes up less than 1% of the atmosphere, is carbon dioxide. That's stuff that I'm making as I talk, that's stuff that comes out of the exhaust pipes of our cars, and the stuff that we increase in the atmosphere when we cut down trees is a huge contributor to global warming. Carbon dioxide soaks up a lot of heat and keeps it here. Now, carbon dioxide, as well as what we call a CFC, or a chlorofluorocarbon, break down ozone. They reduce it. So now more UV radiation can get in, more sunburns, more heat, and slowly but surely we see everything around the planet heating up, which we're going to talk about throughout this unit and talk about the different consequences that it's going to have.